Okay, folks, so suitably lubricated, I hope you're ready to continue the night. We have Yann Seznec from Lucky Frame now, who's going to talk about Bad Hotel, apparently. So, Yann.
Hello, I am going to talk about Bad Hotel. Yes, my name's Yann. I'm already repeating things. So, I run a small creative studio company called Lucky Frame. We're based in Edinburgh. It's basically myself, Jonathan, who just left because that's how our company works, and Sean McElroy, who's our artist, and that's the entire company. So I'm sure a lot of you work in similar sized studios, so that won't come as a surprise to you. We are a creative studio. I use that term very carefully because we make some games, and we also make lots of things that aren't games. So we make musical instruments, software, we design performances, we write music, we design custom hardware, we do all sorts of random things with the kind of aim, we sort of have philosophical aims about what we want to do, and one of the philosophical aims, well, one of the ways we approach our creativity is through games, which I think is obviously, as you all know, a really interesting creative medium. So, all of that said, Bad Hotel. Bad Hotel, to tell the end of the story first, is a game that came out last August, and I'm very proud of it. Here's the story. So, the beginnings. Bad Hotel was part of a series of games, which are not completed, which were funded, joint funded by Creative Scotland and Channel 4. I have only good things to say about both of them. They were both great. They both gave us a lot of money, and basically they turned us from a tiny little company. So as background, Lucky Frame's been around since it was founded in 2008, but probably nobody really heard about us until about a year and a half ago, and even then, still a lot of people haven't heard of us. But until between 2008 and 2011, Lucky Frame took what could be charitably called a very kind of slow route to growth. It was basically me on my own, working and not paying myself and supporting the company through doing lots and lots of random projects like playing piano in the Panto at Dundee Rep Theatre, for example, and Jonathan working from the States. We've known each other for over 10 years, and he was working in the evenings, and I was working in the evenings, and we were doing random projects together, little mini things, little apps, little client work and things like that, until we managed to convince people to give us some money, and that let come over from the States and let us hire somebody else. And that's when we really became a kind of fully functional, full-time creative studio. So we had this concept before we got the money, the funding. We had this kind of concept about musical creativity and how it could be combined with games. So the idea being that I'm a musician originally, and Jonathan does a lot of music as well, and that's actually how we started working together, was in a Game Boy dance punk band, but for possibly another post-mortem. And we had this kind of concept that musical generation and composition and playing music, for example, I find it that it's not a coincidence that the action that you use to do music and the action that you do to do games they're both playing, right? You play music and you play a game, and I don't think that's any coincidence. And so we had kind of designed these little prototypes. The one on the left is actually a really crappy prototype, but I mean it's awesome. But it's a crappy prototype of a iPhone port of the MIT coding library, physical coding library, Scratch, if you've heard of that. We called it Itch. And on the right is a space shooter drum machine that we prototyped. And we were like, man, this is such a cool idea, and there's so many different applications, and there's so many different things we could do. And we brought it to Channel 4 and Creative Scotland, and we were like, we want to make all these games, and they could all be creative music. And they were like, yeah, I don't know, until we showed them Laser Bunny. And we were like, there's going to be a game, and there's going to be a giant rabbit with lasers in its eyes, and it'll create music. And they were like, we'll give you the money. So basically, we got the money from Laser Bunny, and we've never made Laser Bunny. Instead, we made a game called Pugs Love Beats, which you may have heard of. It was kind of interesting and kind of fun to make, but also kind of a very strange, bizarre, experimental thing. The second game we made within this project was Bad Hotel. And we started, it was actually a game jam game that Jonathan made in 24 hours, with the concept being a literal tower defense game. So it's a tower defense where you're actually building a tower, and then trying to protect that tower. So a kind of cheeky game design in-joke, which then I took a look at and I was like, actually, you know what, there's something really interesting musically about this. I wonder if we could actually develop that idea and kind of shoehorn it into this greater project that we were doing with Creative Scotland and Channel 4. So we did, and this is a bunch of the kind of, what's it called, prototype art, as you can tell, concept art, things like that, that Sean started mocking up. And we started thinking about this idea of building a hotel from the center. So you can kind of see that every one of these things has a sort of central hotel node. So the idea we were kind of starting to build around was this idea that you would start with, every level would start with a single hotel, and you could build rooms on it, and then as you built the rooms, it would change the kind of defensive properties of the hotel, and maybe some of them would make you money, and some of them would be weapons. And the musical component of it was basically a nodal sequencer. So if anybody's played around with sequencers, you may have come across nodal sequencers, which are really interesting. It's basically the idea that there is, it's kind of like branches, basically. So the idea that something starts at a point, and then musical events branch off from that point. And that was what interested me from a musical standpoint. We also started getting into really interesting, fun character design, with the idea that enemies were coming after you to try and destroy your hotel, and so we had various enemy trees, etc., etc. Yeah, pretty fun design process on that hotel, I gotta say. Eventually the game started to look like this. Very clean sort of Art Deco look. I'll play some examples of the sound as well, because it is a kind of sound generation game. We also put in a bit of a storyline, so the storyline being that Tarnation Tadstock, the Texas tyrant who's flying that plane, is actually the owner of the hotel, and he's installed you as the manager, but then he's actually trying to destroy it to collect on insurance money, because he's lost all of his money in a credit default swap. So it kind of continued the tradition that we had started with Pugs Love Beats of kind of credit crunch criticism games. And we hope to keep going with that. So there were various different levels. This is a kind of city nighttime level. That one's a kind of mountain level. And those different levels, you would unlock different guns, and you would unlock different sound packs as well. So as you progress through the different worlds, I don't know why I'm saying this in past tense, because it still exists. As you progress through different worlds, you get different types of sounds. So for example, the mountain level, you get loads of banjo music, because I'm American and I'm really into folk music. Yeah, so we were really proud of this game by the end. It took us about 4 months of development time, maybe 5 months. But I'll get to the kind of release side of things shortly. We made a video, which features explosions, because we just figured everyone likes explosions. So this audio comes directly from the game, so you get a bit of a feeling. Right. So like I said, that the audio for that comes directly from gameplay. So it's pretty creepy sounding stuff, and kind of the whole aesthetic of the game is actually quite creepy, which I really like. Anyway, long story short, we released it in what did I say? August something, middle of August, somewhere in there. And we got really good press coverage. Kotaku gave us a giant feature article talking about how it was the next game you should absolutely download. Our overall Metacritic score is really high. Touch Arcade, I mean, this is just a couple examples, but basically all the really great blogs picked up on us on release day. This is no accident. I'd like to take some credit for this, but I'll get back to that shortly. So yeah, release day was amazing. We got just like loads and loads and loads of coverage and people getting in touch, and it was totally awesome. Which kind of starts me on this, well, I'm going to basically jump around between lots of different things over the next couple minutes, so hopefully this isn't too confusing. I didn't really organize this very logically. We got basically two different types of reviews. The first is a good example from The Guardian, which called it an unlikely work of minimalist art. Really, really awesome, really proud of, because we're all kind of artists originally rather than being game designers and all that. And then some dude on iTunes who says, I don't understand why it's the price of 2 apps. I hold it to a higher standard because of the price. I'm like, what the hell, man? Like, $2? Like, seriously? We spent 4.5 months on this game and $2 is too much? And there's this kind of really interesting concept on the iTunes store. And, oh, did I say that this was for iPhone and iPad? Anyway, iPhone and iPad. That there's this really interesting idea of a unit of measurement as an app, right? It's like, why is the price of 2 apps? It doesn't say why it's $2. It's why it's the price of 2 apps. An app is a unit of measurement, right? And it's just this idea that like app cost $1. That's it. Like no question, which is really interesting. So that's also a quote that I put up there to explain that we released it originally for $2. And eventually dropped it down to $1. Yeah, pricing sucks. Pricing totally is the worst thing ever, as I'm sure everybody who's put out a paid app knows. I actually think that well, I'll get back to this maybe later on, but I actually think the problem is we didn't charge enough. I think we probably should have charged $4 for it, rather than, anyway, so that's that. So yeah, this was kind of the highs and lows of reviews, where the kind of establishment of media absolutely loved us. And then kind of morons on the internet were like, oh, this kind of, I don't get it. Like, why does everyone... And then there's also a type of kind of moron on the internet who sees a lot of positive reviews and then makes a point of being against them. You know, so you see it for other games all the time. It's like, everybody else is crazy. I'm the one who's right, and I'm just like some guy in Stevenage or whatever. Anyway, so results of all of this release nonsense was some really great reviews. Like I said, a couple of nice quotes up there. We were finalists in the TIG Award, whatever that's worth, and then much more excitingly, finalist for an Independent Games Festival Award, which was actually our 2nd time in a row. So we'd gotten one for Pugs with Beats as well. And we won a BAFTA. That's BAFTA on my soldering table. The IGF award, I feel, I'm going to get a slight soapbox here, but I feel that in the Scottish game scene is not valued enough. It blows my mind that we are the only Scottish company, as far as I know, to get nominated for an IGF in recent memory, because without a doubt, the IGF is absolutely the #1 biggest thing that's ever happened to us as a company. We got the Pugs Love Beats nomination is absolutely what led to everybody knowing about Bad Hotel. It opened up so many doors to us. It connected us to the best game designers in the world. And getting it again in Bad Hotel was absolutely amazing. So we haven't won either time, but I actually think just getting that nomination was probably better than getting virtually any other award that we could have gotten. As an example of that, of why it's so amazing, IGF, if you get an IGF nomination, you automatically get all access passes to GDC, and you get 2 of them, so there's £4,000 for you already. And you also get a stand at GDC, so there's another couple grand for you. And you also get into the totally ridiculously stupid award ceremony, which was just like totally over the top. And it was really funny because we were actually sat at a table with the guys who made Coblops, or sorry, I call it Coblops, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and they had no idea what the hell we were doing together. It was like Clash of Worlds. It was so funny. Anyway, so here we are looking cool at IGF and at GDC. So yeah, and basically we were like, our stand was like next to all of our heroes. We were like sitting next to Terry Cavanaugh from Super Hexagon, and across the aisle from Michael Bro. Actually, I say we're the only Scottish company that's wrong. Michael Bro, who's a game designer you should all know, is based in Fife. Yeah, so anyway, totally amazing people, totally amazing stuff. Another interesting thing that happened to us on the release of Bad Hotel was we got some mini features from Apple. So we didn't get a major feature, but we were on the front page of the App Store for 2 weeks. So that's us next to Instagram. We also got, and this was worldwide, so this, I believe this, yeah, this is the UK store, but it was really similar on the US store. And we also got a little miniature feature, like one of these style things on the music page. I think it has the music app section. So that was really cool, really interesting. So how did this all translate into sales? Temper your expectations. That is our total number of sales to date, 17,065 sales in Bad Hotel. This translates to a total revenue for us directly into our pockets after Apple's cut of just about 10 grand. So anybody who's run a company for 4 months, 5 months with 3 employees knows that that's about 3 weeks running cost, maybe 5 weeks running cost for a company. Which is awesome because it took us 4 months to make this game. So get into game design, and all you need to do is get lots of press coverage or media coverage or good reviews, or I don't, anyway. But anyway, here's our numbers. And we're really happy with them. So don't get me wrong, like 17,000 people playing our game, that's fucking awesome, right? Like that's incredible. And you can very clearly see the classic, this is the sales you will see no matter what you release on the iTunes store. It's just that y-axis might change, right? So you'll get a giant spike, then about 50% the next day, and then about 50% of that, 50% of that, and you get a really quick logarithmic dip. And then each one of those little extra spikes is some kind of news story that came on afterwards, with the one exception being, I believe, I don't remember if it's this one or that one, is when we switched the game to 99 cents. So, yeah, interesting. There you go. Do with that what you will. Our rankings. So everybody goes on about rankings in terms of iTunes and how important it is, and it's definitely true. Rankings are very, very important. This is our rankings for the first month, because after that, it's basically just woo, like that. So yeah, that's our rankings. The interesting note here is doing a little bit of like rough, fuzzy math analysis on them. So for a couple days, one of those lines, you can see we ranked up to 101st overall in the US for a couple days. So that's pretty awesome. Really, 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 we're really pleased with that. Apple will very readily tell you that there's something like 750 or 800,000 apps on the App Store. So rough math puts you rough math, sorry, in Britain, puts us in the 99.99th percentile of sales, right? Not so bad. What's interesting is that you can get into the 101st position selling not even 2,000 copies a day, selling 1,000 copies a day. So basically, I think putting 2 and 2 together, it shows that the competition near the top is just like out of control, insane. Like the logarithmic scale on the number of copies you need to sell to go up 1 spot from there is just really, really, really steep. So back to reviews. This is a kind of interesting, because people talk about iTunes reviews as well, right? 5-star ratings and 3-star ratings and 1-star ratings. I have many opinions on the reviews systems on the iTunes store, virtually all negative. I mean, it's really like batshit insane the way it works, like totally insane, like just nonsense. And this kind of shows the runs. This is a really actually quite good example of what happened to us with Bad Hotel. So you get a bunch of like amazingly good reviews from all over the world, and then people who are like, crashes for me, 1 star. It's like, well, thanks, man. I have no way of getting in touch with them. And this guy's like, oh, it crashes on my iPhone 5. Well, it's like, I've got an iPhone 5. I play it all the time. Like, how am I supposed to know how to help that person? Because people don't get in touch with you, and you can't get in touch with them. So it's incredibly frustrating to deal with that. And yeah, we actually tried to deal with it in our own cheeky way by making a series of videos called Letters from the iTunes Mailbox, where I read out some of these reviews and then responded to them. Yeah, so there's that. But yeah, you can see overall our reviews were actually really good. If you just look at the star ratings, we definitely have some negative reviews, but far more 5-star reviews than we have any others. The #1 complaint we had for Bad Hotel is that it was too hard. So it is definitely a brutally difficult game. If anybody's played Bad Hotel, guarantee you, well, a very, very, very small percentage of people who play Bad Hotel finish Bad Hotel. I'll get back to that shortly. The future, a quick note on Bad Hotel, is another reason why an IGF nomination is totally badass, is that it gets you an automatic Steam distribution. So we're actually, over the summer, once we finish our next game, we're going to be making, porting Bad Hotel to Windows and Mac and maybe Linux, and releasing it on Steam, target August or September. So that's really exciting. And kind of tied in with the future is kind of the consequences of what happened post Bad Hotel. So you may know, we've released another game since Bad Hotel called Wave Trip. And Wave Trip has actually done really well as well. Got loads of amazing news coverage for sure, but actually even more than we did for Bad Hotel. But on top of it, we got, Apple is very clearly paying attention to us. They got in touch with us and asked us to provide artwork for them so that they could put it inside giant iPads in all of their Apple stores around the world. So that's a picture from Glasgow, but you can see it in London, Paris, and all sorts of places. It was also featured, I don't know if anybody knows, it was also featured 2 days ago, or is it yesterday? 2 days ago in the WWDC presentation by Johnny Ive when they like showed the iPhone and they open a folder and there's Wave Trip. So it was really cool, and we were like, ah, Wave Trip, that's my thing. So that was really cool because we didn't know about it. And without a doubt, if Bad Hotel hadn't gotten as much attention as it did, Apple would almost certainly not be paying attention to us the way they do now. There's some deep, horrible irony in all of that I'm very well aware of we're like chasing after the kind of like the attentions of the high priests of Cupertino, but anyway, that's a whole other world. So, mistakes that we made. There's two mistakes that we made, in fact, or 3. I forgot to put the 3rd one on here. Anyway, the first is testing and implementation. They're actually 2 things, but quite related. We tested Bad Hotel a lot, but we kind of overlooked some really crucial things. So in the first week or 2 weeks, there were 2 main critiques in Bad Hotel. One was that it was way too hard, and that critique I don't really care about. I'll get to that soon. The other critique was that people had trouble placing the rooms. And we had kind of combined those 2 things when we were watching testing, and we were sort of thinking like, oh, that's kind of the same thing, we shouldn't worry about it. And in practice, what it was not the same thing at all. There was a definite problem in terms of the actual mechanics of playing the game. And we got totally ridiculously hammered on iTunes reviews for that. What was really interesting is that none of the mainstream reviews mentioned it. All the kind of game reviewers were able to look past it and see all this other cool stuff that was in the game. But anybody, kind of normal people who then review on iTunes were all like, this is so, I can't figure it out. It's just totally wrong. There were two things in that. One of them was that a lot of people wanted a different game. So they saw a tower defense game with squares, and what people wanted was a grid game, that you could place rooms on, like you saw the little rooms or little squares. People wanted to be able to place rooms on a grid. That doesn't interest us for a number of reasons. And there wasn't much we could do about that. But there was a very large contingent of people who just had trouble placing rooms. And they were totally right. And we just did not implement that change before we released it, which was too bad. We should have, and it probably would have improved our reviews a lot. And yeah, so then the difficulty thing, I actually kind of would sort of hesitate to put it under mistakes because, we could have approached it slightly differently. The game is really hard, absolutely. But in the original version that we released, you had to beat a level in order to advance, so it was basically unlocking each level. In a later version, we actually just released all the levels unlocked, and it became more of a kind of score chase sort of game. Which actually, I think we should have done from the beginning, because people really respond to that. If they're getting kind of like too frustrated playing a level, it's okay, just jump to another one. It doesn't matter, right? And then because you're playing against everybody in the world, basically, which is really interesting. But at the same time, I think games should be hard. I think there's like mobile games, like there's a real danger these days of making every single game easy, and I think that's pretty lame. Anywho, some lessons to learn. First is personal contact. There's no excuse for not contacting journalists directly when you have something to release. The vast majority of them are desperate to have interesting things sent to them, but you have to do it personally. The thing is, everyone's like, oh, but I don't know who to write. Go to the sites that you read. Go to interesting websites. Virtually all of them will have a list somewhere in that website of everybody's personal email address. Click on it, and click on those email addresses and send them an email and say, hey, I'm working on an interesting thing. Here's a screenshot. Do you want to learn more? And 50% of them won't answer, 25% of them will say, no, I'm not interested, and then a quarter of them will say, yeah, sure, send it along. And then that's the kind of relationship you can build up. If you send out blanket emails, it's worthless. So personal contact is super important. That's virtually all of our media coverage comes from people who we just kind of keep in touch with. They're interested in us, I'm interested in what they write. I really only, it's a kind of interesting back and forth. That's where the best stuff comes from. I hope I don't have to say this, but don't ever pay for a review. It's just nonsense. But people still do, I think, so don't. It's dumb, and it doesn't work. But I take it one step further and say that there's a lot of websites that have like little submission forms. You might have seen it if you've tried to release an app, that are like, hey, give us a promo code here, like type in your promo code here, give us a URL, and give us an email address, and then you hit send. I did a bunch of those in a kind of blind fit of panic the day before releasing Bad Hotel. We got about 40 really, really high quality press reviews and media reviews in the first week of Bad Hotel, and exactly 0 of them came from those sites. So just don't, those go to some kind of nonsense inbox, so don't even bother. Be public. If I see one more NDA, I swear to God, it's so ridiculous. Like, being private about what you're working on is so worthless. Everybody, to think that what you're doing is special is a total mistake. I'm sure there are in fact, somebody else has just come out with a musical tower defense game. And that's awesome. I'm so glad they have. You should really be assuming that other people are doing what you're doing. Your ideas are not special. What is special is how you implement them, get them out, tell the world about them. Pre-release is a really simple thing that a lot of people don't know about, especially on the App Store. If you submit an app to Apple, I assume it's pretty similar with Android, you can set the release date to be way far in the future, and then when they approve it, it's available and you get promo codes in the App Store, and you can send those promo codes to people and they can download it before it's available to the general public. And that's the best way to get journalists to play your app. Journalists want to see things in advance of everybody else, right? So if you can send them a promo code and be like, hey, you're special. I've just got this one. It's not out yet, but you can get it. It's also a really good way for testing because you can test a final, and you can also be sure that Apple will approve it. So if you set a don't choose a public release date until you've been final approval and it's ready to go. And you've got promo codes, you've sent them out, all that stuff. Then you can choose a release date. And also, it's not easy. So just prepare yourself. It's really, really hard to get media coverage. So don't have high hopes. This is all pretty obvious. Make a video. I hope everybody makes a video. That stupid video of buildings collapsing, that's the only video we made for Bad Hotel, and it actually did really well. Didn't need anything else. Websites for your game should be absurdly simple. The best thing to do is try to figure out your game in 3 words, in three phrases. So with Bad Hotel, it was make music, build hotel, stop Tadstock. And it was just those 6 words in a row, and then nice big graphics everywhere and the video, and that was the whole website. But you should have a press kit available for people who want more info, screenshots, all that stuff. And if you don't know it, there's a really, really brilliant framework for it, just called press kit, in one word. I think with parentheses, like a function. So just use that. And date is an interesting question. Everybody's like, oh, what day of the week should I release my app on? Everybody says Thursday, and Bad Hotel, we actually rolled the dice and we released it on Tuesday and tried to push as much promo as we could and get everybody to print their reviews on the Tuesday to time with the release. And I think it really paid off, because if we had released it on Thursday, Apple wouldn't have paid attention to us because it would have been too late. They refresh the iTunes store every Thursday. So by the time it came along to Thursday, our app had been covered on all of the big games blogs for 2 days. And I think that's what made them then feature us on the iTunes store. So this is just a guess, but I stand by that. And finally, more generally, I mean, I would hardly call Bad Hotel a giant success, but I'm quite proud of it. So a couple lessons that I've taken from it is that ultimately it's worth the one thing that a company like Lucky Frame, the one main advantage that we have is that we have the power to make something unusual and crazy and totally uncompromising, because we're a tiny company. We'd gotten some really no strings attached funding. We decided to make it let's just make something that is totally, that nobody else would have, like in a way that nobody else would have made, and try and sell it as something truly original. I think not enough small companies, or I think too many small companies try to compete with large publishers and large companies and try to court large publishers and things like that. When you don't need to, because actually the thing that sets us apart is that originality and strange thinking. And sure, they're making more money than we are, but also we're making the games we want to make. So, yeah. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? Quite an awkward thing, this talking, because then you get an applause and then there's questions and then people feel like they need more applause at the end. Anyway, yeah. Questions? Yes?
If you could improve the iTunes sort of app review system in 3 ways, how would you do it?
3 ways? Oh god. Okay, well I say the first way, I'll try and think of 2 other ways. The main way for me is response. Like Amazon has responses, and eBay has responses, and Airbnb has responses. Like there's no way for developers to respond to their reviews, which is just crazy. Everybody else has a way to respond to reviews. So that to me is the primary way. The secondary way is more experimental. I'm not sure. I find 5 stars, like a kind of incremental 5-star rating system, to actually be really negative, because very few people will say 2 stars, right? Like 2 and 3 is in particular are basically like abstentia votes, right? They don't really count for anything. So people are either like really happy, pretty happy, but the people who give 4-star reviews almost exclusively give 4-star reviews, or they are angry, 1 star, and so then you get like a 5-star review and a 1-star review, and it averages out to 2.5 stars, and it's like, that's not fair, right? Like that, if there was like it just doesn't seem right, because then when you see 5 stars filled up only halfway, you think, oh no, it's a bad app. Whereas one person thought it was amazing, right? So it's kind of weird, like, I think it gives too much choice. Like, I would almost rather have, I mean, rating systems are really interesting, right? Because like YouTube has thumbs up, thumbs down, and most people give thumbs up, and very few people give thumbs down, for the most part, because who's going to vote actively to dislike something? Only kind of annoying people do that. But then, like, Facebook is a different approach, right? Because it's only thumbs up. Everything's great, awesome. There's no way of being like dislike. Like, it's always really funny though, because then somebody's like, my dog just died. And it's like, I like this. You know, like, but it's like you're showing your support by liking the post, but not by liking what happened. So it's this like weird disconnect there. But it's possible. Like, what if apps just had? What if the rating system for apps was just like? Like, I actually think that would probably be a really good way, right? Because the apps that people don't like just wouldn't get likes. Isn't that enough? You know, otherwise you give this kind of illusion of power to people. It's like, 3.5 stars, because I'm a critic. You know, I know what I'm talking about. You know, it's like, no, you don't. You're a moron, and your thing crashes on your phone because you run 35 apps at once, right? Like, anyway, that's what I think. So there's 2 reasons. I can't think of a third. Yes?
What price do you wish you'd put Untitled out?
I think probably tier. I'm not sure.
Not a real tier.
Maybe tier. I've seen, so maybe tier 3 or 4, and even maybe launch.
Pick one.
Okay, then I would say launch at tier 5 and then drop down to tier 3 after a month or something.
Yeah.
So tier 5, for those who don't know, is $5. I think it's £3.69, something like that.
I think so.
And then tier 3 is $2 below that, whatever it is. I think $1.69 in pounds.
Do you think you would have seen the same sales level in terms of units?
Well, it's interesting because we did price a bit higher on Wavetrip, which is maybe a different measure in a way, because Wavetrip has user-generated content and all this different stuff that we integrated. So we've been kind of unashamedly tier 3 on that, I think. Anyway, we haven't changed the price on it at all. And actually the sales in terms of revenue have actually been higher than that hotel. So that's one of the reasons why I think, oh, well, we should have just gone higher. There's also a philosophical reason that I think by charging really low, we're really devaluing our work, which I think is a bad thing. And yeah. Yes. I have time for one more question, but then I have to take a train. Or do I not?
You really don't.
Okay, it's at 10:25, right?
You missed it.
No! Ooh!
You say it right up, man.
Oh, I'd love to, but I really need to get home. Okay, well, I'm going to... Oh, there you go. Sorry about that. Thank you.